Most people spend years chasing better income. Almost none of them stop to ask why the market keeps undervaluing them before they even speak. Why the market prices you before you make a move. There is a calculation happening in every room you walk into. It runs faster than conscious thought, operates below the level of polite conversation, and produces a number. That number is not your salary. It is your perceived value, and it is set before you say a single word. This is not a motivational concept. It is behavioral pattern recognition operating at the social level, a system refined over centuries of human hierarchy, trade, and power dynamics. Every structured environment, from ancient merchant guilds to modern boardrooms, has operated on the same underlying rule. Resources flow toward perceived stability and away from perceived need. The common assumption is that financial success builds confidence, that once you accumulate enough, the inner authority will follow naturally. It is a comfortable idea because it removes the demand for internal work. But the pattern tells a different story. Individuals who enter high-stakes environments without a solid psychological foundation tend to exit those environments in the same condition they arrived. Meanwhile, those who carry structured inner authority from the start attract opportunity before they can demonstrate results. Inner authority is not a performance. It is not dominance or aggression. It is a specific internal state that communicates one thing clearly. This person does not need your approval to know their value. And paradoxically, that state is precisely what makes others want to extend approval, better offers, and higher compensation. There is a principle embedded in classical negotiation strategy, studied in diplomatic circles for centuries. The party that visibly needs the deal loses leverage before the first offer is made. This is not cynicism. It is the fundamental mechanics of perceived value in action. Its economic effects are measurable. The same candidate presenting identical qualifications with internal groundedness versus visible anxiety receives different offers. The same business proposal delivered from a place of strategic calm versus desperate need generates different responses. The content did not change. The perceived value of the source did. In competitive markets, perception does not just influence outcomes. At critical moments, it becomes the outcome. What does that say about the deals, roles, or opportunities that passed through your world recently, and what signal you may have been sending without realizing it? If this topic speaks to you, subscribe so you don't miss what's coming next. How people-pleasing quietly drains your economic position. There is a behavioral pattern that operates under complete professional camouflage. It looks like cooperativeness. It sounds like reasonableness. It gets praised in performance reviews as being a team player. But underneath the surface, it functions as a slow and systematic transfer of power away from you. The pattern is approval dependency. The chronic need to ensure that others are comfortable with your decisions, your ambitions, your positioning, and your worth. It does not announce itself. It operates through micro-decisions, accepting terms you know are below your value because the confrontation feels too costly. Backing away from a negotiating position the moment the other side shows mild resistance. Diluting your actual perspective so that no one in the room feels challenged. Each of these micro-decisions sends a signal. Not the signal you intend to send, but the one the environment receives. This person's position is adjustable. And adjustable positions get adjusted consistently, directions that benefit everyone except the person doing the adjusting. Intelligence and investigative frameworks developed for high-stakes environments identified something that translates directly to professional and financial life. A subject who constantly seeks validation becomes predictable. Predictability removes negotiating friction for the other side. It tells them exactly how much pressure is needed to move your position. And that information, once known, gets used. The economic cost is not always visible in a single interaction. It accumulates. The professional who chronically accepts undervalued terms trains their network to see them as someone whose floor can be lowered. The entrepreneur who abandons strategic decisions under social pressure signals that external opinion carries more weight than internal analysis. Over time, this shapes the category of opportunity that gets offered to you. Here is what makes this particularly difficult to address. Approval-seeking behavior often emerges from environments where it was a genuine survival mechanism. It worked once. The challenge is recognizing when it stopped being adaptive and started being economically destructive. The correction is not to become indifferent to feedback or dismissive of others. It is to build a clear internal reference point from which you operate, one that does not require external validation to remain stable under pressure. Drop a comment if you have ever recognized this pattern in a moment that cost you something real. Why emotional reaction is the most expensive decision you never budgeted for. Nobody lists it as a line item. No financial planner accounts for it in a portfolio review. But there is a cost that silently compounds across every career, every business, and every negotiation. The cost of decisions made from emotional reaction instead of strategic clarity. The human nervous system, when confronted with financial pressure, activates responses designed for immediate physical threat. These responses are fast, instinctive, and optimized for short-term survival. They are exactly the wrong toolkit for environments that reward long-term positioning, delayed gratification, and calculated restraint. The result is a predictable pattern. Under pressure, the reactive mind sells assets at the moment of maximum fear. It accepts bad terms to end the discomfort of a difficult conversation. It abandons a sound strategy because an influential voice expressed doubt, and the emotional system registered that doubt as danger. In every case, the decision felt logical in the moment. The rationalization came afterward, constructing a coherent story and a choice that was actually made by the nervous system, not the analytical mind. Stoic philosophy, developed in one of history's most volatile political environments, treated this not as a moral failing but as an engineering problem. The goal was not to eliminate emotional input. It was to build an internal structure capable of receiving that input without being immediately captured by it. To observe the pressure before acting from within it. In modern competitive environments, this capacity has direct economic value. The professional who remains composed when a deal is falling apart is the one who finds the leverage point others miss. The founder who holds their valuation through investor skepticism is the one who closes at terms they determined, not terms they were pressured into. The executive who responds rather than reacts in a crisis is the one whose judgment gets trusted with more, and who gets compensated accordingly. Emotional self-regulation is not about being unaffected. It is about creating a gap between stimulus and response wide enough for strategy to enter. That gap, practiced consistently, is where better decisions live, and better decisions, made repeatedly over time, produce a fundamentally different financial trajectory. If this is adding real value to how you think, leave a like. It helps this content reach the people who need it most. How silent authority determines who gets chosen when no one is watching. There is a selection process that happens in every high-value environment. It is not announced, not documented, and rarely discussed openly. It takes place in the perceptions that form between formal interactions, in how people speak about you when you are not in the room, in the micro-assessments made before a meeting begins, in the pattern of whose opinion is waited for before a decision is finalized. This is the invisible hierarchy, and it distributes access, opportunity, and compensation according to a set of criteria that most people never consciously learn because no one explicitly teaches them. Title does not determine position in this hierarchy. Behavior does. Specifically, the behavioral signals that communicate internal groundedness versus internal fragility. Environments populated by high-functioning professionals are extraordinarily sensitive to these signals, even when the people inside them could not articulate what they are reading. They feel it, and they respond to it. The pattern has appeared consistently across historical power structures. In courts, military commands, and diplomatic negotiations, the individuals who shaped outcomes most reliably were rarely the loudest voices. They were the ones who held their position without visible effort, who did not react to provocations designed to reveal their floor, who communicated through what they chose not to say as much as through what they said. Their authority was perceived because it was real, rooted in internal structure, not external performance. In contemporary organizational life, this translates precisely. The person in a leadership meeting whose silence creates a pause before others continue speaking. The negotiator who does not fill uncomfortable quiet with concessions. The professional who receives a low offer and responds without visible agitation, creating a pressure point simply through composed non-acceptance. What these individuals share is not technique. Technique is visible and eventually transparent. What they share is a settled internal relationship with their own value, one that does not fluctuate with the temperature of the room. The uncomfortable observation is this: the market does not simply reward hard work. It rewards positioning. And positioning is not what you do in a formal evaluation. It is what you communicate in every unguarded moment that accumulates into a reputation. That reputation then operates independently, opening or closing doors before you arrive. There is something specific that this implies about how your daily micro-behaviors are building or eroding your economic future right now. Why the posture you hold today is writing a financial contract with your future. Every environment you operate in is running a continuous background process. It is not evaluating your resume or your credentials. It is reading your behavioral signature, the consistent pattern of how you carry yourself under uncertainty, under pressure, under the specific discomfort of moments that require you to hold your position when releasing it would be easier. That pattern becomes a reputation, and reputation, in economic terms, functions as infrastructure. It determines what gets offered to you before you negotiate. It shapes the floor beneath your asking price. It signals to high-value networks whether you belong in their category of trusted counterparts or in the category of people to be managed carefully and compensated minimally. The architecture of this reputation is built from decisions that seem small. The meeting where you held your analysis even when a more senior voice pushed back without real evidence. The contract where you walked away from terms that were structured to benefit the other side. The moment you chose strategic silence over an anxious rush to fill the space with justification. None of these moments felt like financial decisions, but cumulatively, they are. They are the compound interest of behavioral integrity, and they pay returns in the form of better deals, stronger professional positioning, and the kind of trust-based access that no application or cold outreach can replicate. Practical action. For the next 7 days, after any significant professional interaction, ask yourself one question before analyzing the outcome. Ask whether you operated from your own internal reference point or whether you allowed the pressure of the room to relocate your position without your conscious agreement. No judgment, just observation. That practice of honest self-monitoring, done consistently, begins to recalibrate the behavioral patterns that are currently shaping every economic outcome in your life. The market is not waiting for your best intention. It is responding to your demonstrated pattern. The gap between those two things is where most people lose ground. They never realize they are losing. And the question that remains, worth sitting with, if the version of you that showed up in every high-stakes moment this year were the only data point available to predict your financial future, what would that data be projecting? If this video shifted something in how you see your own positioning, subscribe to this channel, turn on notifications so you catch what comes next, and leave a comment telling us which part of this conversation hit closest to home.